Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Meet MassChallenge series, Ask Me Anything with the MassChallenge Managing Directors. My name is Hannah Perry. I'm the moderator and the program director for the New England Early Stage location. Today, you'll walk away with three things. So first, you'll hear directly from the program leadership about their plans for this year's accelerators. The second, you'll hear about how startups will benefit during this year's virtual accelerator. And third, what successful applicants do to make their application stand out. But first, I would like to introduce Larissa Rocha of Brex, who will be speaking today about an upcoming opportunity for startups. So Larissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Larissa. Quick intro on myself and Brex. I've been with Brex from the very beginning as the first employee, and have been for a very long time side to side with MassChallenge as well. A little bit on my background at Brex. I did everything from finance modeling to customer support to recruiting, business development, and now more recently, I'm the general manager of our tech business, which is very exciting for me because I get to work with startup founders and with accelerators like MassChallenge. We always host office hours with our partner accelerators on any of these topics that I covered about the first couple of years of building a startup, of building a growing business. So if you're interested on that, reach out to us. Brex is a credit card and a bank account product alternative for startups. We come in making it super simple to sign up, to use the card. We give much better rewards, and we're also automating a lot of the complex expense management things that end up taking a lot of time and energy from founders and from startup employees. We're very excited today, and that's just today, to be giving one iPad to one of the companies that apply today. The link is over there, brex.com/MC. And we're looking forward to working together more throughout this year. Thank you very much and enjoy the event.
Thank you, Larissa. Okay, so we're going to move on. In addition to our corporate partner Brex, I'd also like to give a special thanks to our other MassChallenge annual partners. As you can see, it's a large group, and these organizations represent industry leaders who are committed to helping startups launch, grow, and succeed. Next slide. Before we begin our chat, I'm going to give a quick overview of MassChallenge and our global network of innovators. So MassChallenge was founded in 2009, and we were founded with the mission to equip bold entrepreneurs with the resources to disrupt the status quo and create meaningful change across industries. Through our nonprofit Zero Equity Accelerator model, we support more than 400 startups each year from all industries, all corners of the world, across 7 locations and 9 programs. Our accelerators are the most efficient pathway to connect startups, experts, corporates, and communities so that they can grow and transform businesses and economies together. Next slide. MassChallenge's proven methodology is hyper-focused on helping entrepreneurs focus and identify goals and key initiatives to improve upon in the 4 months of the program. 2, to provide access to a meaningful network of experts that are curated based on the needs of the cohort, both in industry and the stage. And then 3rd, connecting entrepreneurs with a deeper network of alumni and community partners. And we focus on these areas because our alumni feedback says that these are the 3 most important benefits to the MassChallenge program. And this is how you create a sustainable company and prepare yourself for growth and future fundraising. Next slide. And so on this slide, I'll just read directly from it, but you can see the accomplishments that the MassChallenge portfolio has had over the years. To date, we've supported over 2,900 startups that have gone on to create over 180,000 jobs, raise over $8 billion in funding, and generate over $3 billion in revenue. Very impressive. And so now I'd like to introduce you to our leaders of the MassChallenge early stage program. I'll ask that they turn on their cameras. We have Kate Brummy, the Senior VP of the early stage MassChallenge programs, John Nordby, the Managing Director of MassChallenge Texas, that includes both Austin and Houston, and then Hope Hopkins, the Managing Director of New England, which includes both Boston and Rhode Island. Welcome.
Hey, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Great, and then next slide. Okay, here we go. So MassChallenge offers many benefits to our startups. So I'm going to call on Kate, VP of Early Stage, to talk more about the benefits and what's in store for the 2021 early stage programs.
Great, thank you, Hannah, and welcome everyone. We're so excited to be doing this first AMA. We hope you have lots of questions for us. We're here for that purpose. Before I dive into the benefits on this page, I think it's important to highlight, first of all, how our mission matches our model, which is the number one benefit. So our mission is to equip bold entrepreneurs to disrupt the status quo. And we do that in a way that takes no equity so that we can support the highest potential, highest growth startups, regardless of your financing preferences. The majority of our startups go on to raise venture funding. We had 2 IPOs last year. We have 2 more that we know of pending this year. But with that said, when startups come to the MassChallenge program, they don't have to make that choice immediately. We work with founders starting their commercialization. We work with founders who are bootstrapping, and we also work with founders who are fundraising. Last year, the average founder raised about $300,000 during the program alone. So that is a key benefit that we offer, and it's so that we get the privilege of working with those highest growth startups. I think the second key benefit that we provide is the program's designed to have you leave with a stronger business. So you laid out the 3 pillars of our program: focus, curated connections, and support. And those 3 pillars are designed to help you focus on the most important problem that you're going to face, so that you can access the resources that MassChallenge provides to accelerate the growth of your business, the value of your business during a short period of time, and build a community of peers and also other champions within our community that will help advance your business well after MassChallenge. In addition to that, of course, we provide a bunch of the other benefits that are on this page here. So the programming aspects you'll experience are live seminars and workshops designed to give you access to knowledge and expertise from our global network, and also the chance to network and meet with those leading individuals. We'll do this both live and in a digital format so that you can customize your pathway based on your availability, your schedule, your priorities in any given week. We also, I know John and Hope will go into this more, we have focused industry tracks that really allow startups in those categories to access a very unique specialized network of mentors and corporate partners and investors to accelerate your business. We're fortunate to be supported by and work with over 100 corporate partners across our global network. And our job is to help startups in our cohort also make connections to those corporates, both to get early customer feedback and validation, to go to market and sell or pilot, and then also in some cases to form strategic relationships that may lead to acquisition or financing. We work really hard with exceptional partners like Larissa and Brex to ensure that startups who come through our program get access to some of the best resources out there at a discounted rate. And we know that that is valuable. We develop those relationships based on feedback from startups. And so those include deals and discounts, a resource bank of best-in-class templates and available resources. And then also, fingers crossed for this year, office space. We provide an opportunity for startups to have a place to work and, more importantly, work together over the course of the program. This year, we are hoping that our offices will be safe to reopen. If we do open, it will not be required. Joining the office space is an option. And particularly this year, all of the program will be, you'll be able to participate virtually. And then the last one, and I put this at the end because I think we see often startups overestimate the value of the equity free cash prizes. For us, it's a secondary order, but we know it's so attractive and so important. And so this year we'll give away over $1 million in equity free cash prizes to top startups in the cohort, in addition to an additional group of prizes from key partners like the International Space Station National Lab. So I'll stop there, Hannah. We've got a lot in store. We're really excited, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kate. On the next slide, so Kate briefly mentioned industry tracks, which are a really interesting way that we're supporting startups in emerging industries. So John and Hope, I'd love to walk through each of these, learning a little bit more about the tracks and how startups get selected for each.
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. Just a little bit on how we think about the tracks, right? So our seed stage programming, as we mentioned before, is operating across Boston, Rhode Island, Austin, and Houston. So as you all apply to the program, if you have an application for one of these tracks, you can select that on your application. And then once you make it into to the accelerator, we have some specialized content, some access to these industries, both through some of our partnerships, but also just through the community at large. So what we do in our physical locations is we look for industries where we have a large concentration of experts, a big knowledge base, a really sort of heavy industry participation. And then we leverage that knowledge base to provide sort of a second level of value to startups that are innovating in these spaces. I should mention, we also try to look for spaces that are somewhat underserved by the traditional startup development community, right? So as Kate mentioned, giving away non-equity prizes and essentially not having a venture fund behind us means that we can dive into some of these industries that maybe are traditionally underserved by venture because the development cycles are longer, or my favorite, you just have founders that don't want to give up equity yet. For the VCs on the call, sorry, but you'll hear that a lot from me. That's how we roll. So that being said, in Texas, we have really big infrastructure around things like human health and performance, material science, analytics, defense innovation. So we see a lot of our work focused on things like sports tech, which is really human health and performance and recovery, analytics, material science, really anything that has an application for an athlete, a team, or like sort of scouting recovery kind of stuff. For space commercialization, we've got some great partners here down at in Houston around NASA and Johnson Space Center, and a number of folks have come with us that are looking to sort of commercialize a lot of the operations that happen in low Earth orbit, which as human frees us up to look to Mars at a sooner time frame, which is awesome. So space commercialization could be anything that is an application, not just for folks like NASA, but anybody in that space commercialization industry. So we see a wide range of things here for, again, human health and performance, propulsion, advanced manufacturing, autonomous robotics, things like that. And then for safety and security, we do a lot of this work through our Central Texas office in Austin, and sort of reaching down to San Antonio as well. Really anything that focuses on moving innovation forward through the defense innovation industry. So we've got some great partners there through a number of government agencies, but also a number of contractors, and a lot of expertise and knowledge around all of the things that keep us safe in every environment that you can imagine. Water, air, sea, under or ground, I think we're supposed to say now, all different spaces. And we also run that track up in Boston. Hope, if you want to take it from there, talk a little bit about what you guys do in Boston.
Great. Yeah, happy to. So relative to the safety and security track, you may not think that you identify as a potential DoD startup, but it's actually really important to consider that you may have a dual use application, and that's really exciting to those folks. So lots to come on that. In Boston, and we also host the mobility track. The mobility track is new this year, and it's focusing on transforming transportation. So a lot of people traditionally think the e-vehicles, fleets, and that sort of thing, but we're looking at other pillars too: infrastructure, policy, and really what's the impact on humans. The other track that we run, and this is the third year, is the Enterprise Technology Fellowship. Again, this supports a select group of early stage companies that believe that they're building towards the next generation of enterprise technology and service platforms. So really exciting about that, focusing primarily on cybersecurity, data management, and artificial intelligence. So lots of niche areas to work in.
Yeah, I actually might mention too, real quick, that, I mentioned to apply to the tracks is just part of the normal application process. So as Hope mentioned, if you have an application in any one of these things, like feel free to select that and we'll go through that sort of validation piece with you. What more often than not, what we find is a lot of startups will come to us, they'll join the program and they'll realize, within the first month or so that they actually have a great application for one of our government partners or somebody that's in a sort of a different space entirely. And it's just a great sort of secondary point of connectivity. So we will help you through that, but certainly lean on that and know that you're not missing out on any other part of MassChallenge by applying to those tracks.
Thank you. So another question for both of you on the next slide. I'm actually seeing some questions come through, so hopefully this will answer them. How do startups know which program is the best fit for them? And especially outside of tracks, what are the other benefits for each location?
This, no doubt, is the million-dollar question right now, particularly as we go into a 100% virtual program this year. So we have 4 locations, one in Austin, Boston, Houston, and Rhode Island. We'll keep hammering that into you. How do you choose? That's a really great question. Traditionally, our guidance is to choose based on industries of interest, potential customers, where is the specific geography that might work best for you once you've left our program. We're a nice soft landing of sorts into these different ecosystems. So that's one way to frame the question. The other thing is you don't have to just participate, or excuse me, you don't have to just apply to one location. You can select all 4. We do have a sort and rank on our application, but this year, because we are 100% virtual, no matter which location you end up in, you will have access to the shared resources, all of the curriculum, the speakers, the mentors across the entire US program. So if you really aren't sure about which program to apply for, because you just simply don't know much about these different locations, go ahead and select all 4. Like I mentioned, you'll be asked to rank them. And again, it's just those 4 pieces to keep in mind is what's driving that local economy. So for instance, in Texas, obviously fossil fuels is a big piece. You've just heard a little bit about sports and space technology. So if that's something of interest or applicability to your business, then you might want to think towards that. Boston, we have a huge biotech asset in town. We also here in Rhode Island are focused heavily on blue tech, with the Navy having a pretty sizable presence here. We're also happy to help guide those decisions a little bit. Any one of us, I imagine, can be available to provide some backdrop to the different ecosystems. The other thing to consider are investors in the region and strategic partners. So again, it's network, it's investment, it's really what is in that ecosystem that may or may not be relevant to you and your company. So I'll push it over to John to talk a little bit more specifically about Texas.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I'll just add that, in particular this year, knowing that a lot of our content, at least right now, is going to be virtual, you're not going to miss out on anything by joining one location over another. So really, I would think about the locations as an additional access point to whatever it is that's going to move you forward, right? So for us in Texas, if you're at a stage where venture capital is really, really high on your list, which I'm going to be a little crass, everybody thinks venture capital is high on their list, but if you are actually at that stage where you need to go raise venture, it's harder to find a better place outside of the coast than Austin for that. Similarly, we mentioned some of the industry tracks around defense innovation. We see a lot of industry trends through Central Texas that focus on things like mobility and AI, machine learning. Here in Houston, very industrial town, so largest medical complex in the world, energy capital of the world. We see a lot of work around logistics, manufacturing, and obviously space. So those are sort of like all of the big industries that if you're considering the necessity to have an access point to, whether it's from a mentor, a funder, a customer, whatever that looks like, those are good reasons to sort of prioritize one location over another.
Just quickly, I see that there are a number of questions coming through the Q&A. We're going to go ahead and answer those live in a few minutes, just so everybody has the benefit of those answers.
Great, thank you. So the next slide, we've talked a lot about the virtual program. And so Kate, since we're going 100% virtual this year with hopefully the option to be in person as an added benefit, could you provide a little bit more detail about our timeline, what the application process looks like, what judging is like, and then what happens during the program and the award ceremony towards the end?
Sure thing. I'm happy to. And I'll also say that you guys get the benefit of a more experienced virtual MassChallenge this year. So we pivoted last year in March to go 100% virtual. We were very pleased with the feedback we got from startups, and we are very committed to learning and improving on what we did. So here's the timeline. So we're at just launched applications. We encourage you to go now and create your entrepreneur profile and then begin on your startup profile also, though you have until March 31st. We know you guys are procrastinators. We see it every year. We still encourage you to get started now and reach out if you have questions about the applications. We'll then move into an online judging round. So this is the point at which we are fortunate to mobilize thousands of experts across the globe to screen applications and provide us recommendations on which startups should move forward. Each application will be reviewed on average by 5 experts who will provide you feedback on your application, regardless of whether you move forward, and will also recommend to MassChallenge the subset of companies who will move into what we call round 2. Round 2 involves a live pitch and Q&A. You will be scheduled for a 20-minute pitch to a panel of judges, typically 5 to 7 judges who have expertise in your category. You'll deliver approximately a 10-minute pitch, followed by 10 minutes of Q&A. If you move on to this stage, we'll be providing at least one workshop on giving strong pitches, particularly for those of you who may not be coming with former entrepreneurial background or MBA training. We want to make sure that this point of the process is fair and accessible to all. It's then fast and furious. We announce our cohort on last week of June and kick off with a boot camp on June 28th. So the accelerator will involve boot camp week where we prepare you for MassChallenge. We connect you to mentors. It'll involve then about 3 months of active programming. And then we have our pre-final and final judging in early fall. Pre-final judging is a way for startups who participate in the cohort to capture their growth, so repitch their company again to a panel of judges with expertise in their category, and advocate to be winners of the cash prizes. About 10% of those startups will then move on to final judging in front of a very elite panel of entrepreneurs each year. We then acknowledge the accomplishments of our entire cohort and award the cash prizes in a large and public ceremony on October 28th. Last year, we were joined by Arianna Huffington, the year before by Airbnb co-founder Nate Blacharski. It's a high energy, high impact event that allows you to showcase the work that you've done and also invite your community to celebrate the work. You know, one thing that I just want to highlight, Hannah, is that our process, you know, including ahead of the cohort, is designed to be valuable to startups. So even if you do not get into the cohort, you will have received 2 rounds of feedback from approximately 10 judges helping you improve your pitch. So if you're sitting here wondering, should I apply? Am I ready? We encourage you to just go ahead and apply, because the process of putting your idea, your company on paper and sharing it with others will make you better. And then obviously for those who move into the cohort, we have a range of systems for you.
Great, thank you. On our next slide, we're going to talk a little bit about eligibility. So MassChallenge is an early stage program that's open to all founders building businesses across all industries from all corners of the world. The only requirement for these accelerators is that you've raised less than 1 million in equity-based funding and less than 2 million in revenue. Otherwise, you are eligible. So for founders, we encourage you to focus mainly on impact. So John, Kate, and Hope Maybe you could just chime in what's expected within the application and how startups can make their application stand out.
Yeah, I'll jump in again. Yeah, because I love this part. This is my favorite part because this is where it's always fascinating to me. So as Kate mentioned, there's 2 rounds, right? So there's going to be a written application that will get a review. We'll get a number of reviews. So no matter what, you'll at least get feedback from those mentors. And then there's the in-person pitch. And to me, it's always awesome to see like people that come across sort of mediocre on the written application and then come in and absolutely kill it in the in-person pitch. So that's sort of a unique challenge, right? Because you've got to be able to talk about the impact you're making on paper, but then also be able to like express that passion live, which is super important. I think one of the probably biggest distinguishing factors between us and other accelerators or competitions that you all have probably been a part of is we really take the stance and we coach our judges that investability is a really important criteria for any company. You've got to be able to show financial sustainability and viability. But for us, that's not the primary component. We're not looking and evaluating at startups based on their ability to go have some sort of liquidity event in the next 2 to 3 years to pay back a fund. We really want startups that are making an impact. And that impact is not just social impact, it's economic impact, it's industrial impact, it's doing something really big and solving a really big challenge in some way. So that's the advice I typically give to founders, like make sure you really hone in on that piece of it. Financial pieces are still extremely important. Don't hear me that they're not, right? But that impact piece is really what we look for.
I would just add to that, and you'll notice that John and I are sort of yin and yang. While it's great, the impact is certainly a huge piece. We really want to see a demonstrated ability to deliver on that impact. So the phrase we use here is believable path to impact. So the notion of you coming in and saying, I'm going to put my drone on the moon in 4 months is probably not realistic. So again, make sure to temper yourself with that believable path to impact.
The last thing I'll add is that we categorize startups across what we call the 4D life cycles: discovery, development, deployment, and distribution. And we recognize that how you will describe your impact, how you'll be able to describe traction differs depending on where you are. And so what we encourage you to do is that vision needs to be big and bold, but we also want you to back it up with the meaningful actions you've taken and or milestones you've hit or traction you've achieved based on the stage you're in. And so that helps you balance both, as Hope was saying, the yin and the yang, helps us understand the huge, bold impact you have, but also that feasible pathway. It shows that you have a clear-headed, reasonable approach to what you're trying to accomplish.
I'll actually just throw in something else that's not like part of our criteria, but just a general like thing you should be aware of. What I've noticed over the few years of running our accelerators here in Texas is our judges very much like founders that are self-aware. So if you are very confident about your solution and your business and your plans, that's a great thing. If you're cocky about it and you're not coachable, probably not going to work out so well for you. Just remember that, we are, our accelerator is based on the mentor community, right? We have thousands of experts that are going to engage this year, right? That are going to not only help us with judging and speaking, but they're going to come in and be one-on-one mentors with you all. So they're looking for people that they know are coachable, they're impressionable, that are willing to take at least some portion of their advice, with the caveat that not everybody is going to give you great advice, right? Like that's something that we'll go through, but just knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are and where it is that you think you need help and why you're coming to MassChallenge is also something that I think really shines well for our judges.
Thank you. So we have one more slide before we break into questions, and this is around our expert community. So some of you on the call might not be ready or interested in applying to the program as a startup, but want to support MassChallenge startups as an expert. So Kate, could you explain a little bit more about what our experts do and what the benefits are of becoming an expert?
Sure, thanks, Hannah. All right, our experts are the heart and soul of our program after John and Hope and our amazing teams. So, we over the course of now 10 years have built a community of individuals with entrepreneurial expertise, leadership expertise, functional or technical expertise that are willing to volunteer both to help us select startups as judges in the judging process that you just identified, as advisors to our cohorts once they join, and as mentors as well. Each year, we mobilize upwards of 3,000 experts in total across our US Seed Accelerator programs. We typically have more than 500 mentors who are available to the startups participating. We expect it will be more than that this year. And the role that experts play, as I said, is to help give guidance, give expertise, and or make connections to startups across the way. I'm happy to be available to anyone who's interested in learning more about the expert program.
Thank you. So now we're going to transition to questions. Just a reminder, if you do have a question, to put it into the Q&A, and then we'll answer them live. So I think the first one, actually, Kate, since you just spoke, I'm just going to hand this one to you. So a question from Paul Russo. Does the prize pool vary by location?
No, it's consistent across. So we like to say there's no prize arbitrage. It's proportionate to the size of the accelerator.
Awesome, thank you. We have a question from Roxana. She has a patent pending medical technology company, officially formed the company in January 2021, and now it's just her. Is she still eligible to apply? We'd like to take that one.
Yes, do it.
Yes, so as a reminder, we accept startups that are solo founders or part of a team. Doesn't matter as long as you meet the early stage criteria. We also had a couple questions about industry, and so to just re-emphasize, there were questions about arts-focused startups or startups in digital health. So we do accept startups from all industries. Perhaps, Hope, do you want to just re-emphasize the benefits?
Sure, I think you answered it there, but absolutely all industries are welcome. And actually, we're one of the few accelerators that also accepts nonprofits. So I know that there was I'm seeing in the chat now that there's some question around if I don't fit into one of the tracks, am I still eligible? 100%. The tracks are just focus areas within the general MassChallenge program. And I don't know offhand what percentage of startups actually participate in the tracks, but there is a huge cohort of folks that just participate in the general cohort.
Great. And then, John, you talked a lot about defining impact as part of the application, path towards impact. So perhaps you can answer this one about revenue numbers in the application. And do you need these glamorous revenue numbers? Since they don't have big university names behind them, will it hamper their chances to qualify?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It's really about the problem that you're solving for and the impact that you plan to create with the solution and the startup, right? So revenue doesn't really matter. We've had startups here that have had back of the napkin ideas that are very big and bold, and we think have, there's something there that's real enough to for us to help them accelerate and find the right path. We've certainly had companies that have come in that have been right up against that revenue or that funding upper limit that we have on the application and have far exceeded that by the time they exited. So we see a very wide range of founders that come through the program. And it's probably also a good time to mention that, we spend a lot of time talking about the expert pool that engages. But year over year, we hear that the founders learn just as much from each other as they do from the expert pool. And there's really like a big sense of community and camaraderie that comes from being a part of a cohort like this. So we are very intentional about trying to keep those companies around the same stage, but it is super important for us to have early stage and later stage companies even within that mix, because you all are going to learn a whole lot from each other from different industries, having different perspectives, all solving really similar challenges together. So no company's too early. And I'll even say, I think I saw something in here about somebody that's raised too much money. Those upper limits can be a bit flexible. So again, we're looking at the size and the stage of the company, meaning if you've generated $3 or $4 million in grants, and we see this a lot in medical devices because you're trying to navigate clearance, you are likely still a very good fit, especially if you're still pre-revenue. So definitely still apply. The general guidance is always just apply, and we can give you that feedback on the back end or work with you to figure out that eligibility criteria.
John, thanks so much. And I just want to add one aspect to the initial question, which was around, do I need to have a shiny resume or a pedigree to be eligible? And I think we want to say loud and clear, no. Our program is designed to capture startups with high growth, high impact potential, regardless of whether you fit or break the typical mold. This means that we are actively looking for startups with different educational backgrounds, different geographic locations than is typical, outside the typical VC categories that we can help support and accelerate. So we are specifically focused on being a destination for all exceptional founders, regardless of your race, gender, background, industry focus.
Great, thank you. And maybe just to answer this one more specifically, this question from Anita, the 1 million in funding, is that just from VCs, or does an SBIR funding count for that?
So as John said, we typically make exceptions when you have sort of grant plus VC funding, and it's we're most focused on is your stage of company appropriate for what we can provide. So as you're filling out the application, you'll have the option of saying, do I fit that criteria? No. And then provide a note to our staff. And what we do in looking through is just review those notes. So again, based on that specific question, I'd say strongly encourage you to still apply.
Great. And then Hope, can you clarify the time commitment needed to participate in the program?
Absolutely. So last year, realizing we were in a virtual world and it was harder to wrap our arms around a lot of the startups, we created a code called the Founders Code. And what that means is it's all about intentional engagement. So it's not about the number of workshops that you attend. That's not going to grade you better or worse in our program. It's more, is the workshop or is the mentor that you identify in line with the goals that you've set for your business, and will that effectively push you forward towards achieving those goals and towards driving some sort of an outcome? So again, this is not a time-based program, but it's really focused around effort and the engagement that is accurate for where you are in your business.
Great, thank you. And then John, since we're virtual, how do startups connect with each other?
Yeah, great question. Because that is hard. It's hard to connect with anybody in a virtual environment, right? Like, it was funny when we wrapped up the end of last year, we said, that was great. We killed it. We pulled off a virtual accelerator. I mean, it still sucked because it was virtual, but at least we made the best of it. And I think we're going to be in that world for a little while, right? So we've got a number of platforms on the back end. We certainly learned a lot from last year on how to connect folks. So our staff's available to do some of that. There's again, a number of platforms. We have Accelerate, which handles most of our office hours and our mentor interactions, very lively Slack channels. But we're also very intentional about trying to create a small group environment wherever we can. So we have wolf packs that startups will join. Those are founders that you'll get to know on a much deeper level. You'll have activities to work on together. And then there's just a lot of intentionality, I'll say, put into not just the curriculum, but the goal setting and how to connect with the right folks that are going to help you meet and manage those goals. So being able to do this in a virtual environment is something that, honestly, we had a pretty good handle on even before COVID, because so many of our founders are international. Their teams are distributed across the world. And so while we typically would maybe have one founder join us in person, we'd have another 2 or 3 members kind of joining from other parts of the planet. And so we were able to kind of double down on that last year and some of those methodologies that we had created before to really amplify that experience. That being said, I think I speak for everyone to say we are very excited about getting back into person at some point in the near future. So take that vaccine as soon as it's available. It's not a plug, but it kind of is, because I want to see all your faces at some point.
Great, thanks. Kate, perhaps you can dive in a little bit to curriculum. So there's a question from a startup who's participated in another accelerator. So just curious how our curriculum might be different.
That's great. So, and I know this question was specifically sort of around the expectations around specific deliverables and, or, we would call them take-home documents. So it sounds as though our program may be different. a core aspect of our program is helping you identify the right goals to focus on and then align your engagement with the program around those goals. We will be providing workshops, for example, in key aspects of entrepreneurship, whether it's customer discovery and validation, go-to-market, building your sales team, et cetera, et cetera. But those are optional, and we encourage founders to join those based on their own knowledge gaps and then also based on their goals. So again, it's not about required curriculum. We also then will have on a weekly cadence fireside chats or open Q&As with experts along certain topics that are really designed to allow you to bring your questions to experts in a way that's productive for you. And so again, it allows you to map your time to your specific goals.
Great. And then we have a couple questions around mentorship. So Hope, if you'd like to take this, how often do startups meet with mentors? Is it scheduled meetings? What does that engagement look like?
It's a great question, and it's entirely based on your needs. So we've identified that there are different personas for mentors. So some are deep coaches, and we typically set an expectation with that mentor group that they try to meet bi-weekly with their mentees. But some of you will be going through maybe a website launch or that first customer meeting and need the support of your mentor twice in 1 week. So it really is arbitrary based on your needs and the cadence that you determine is best suited. And of course, the mentor's availability. Oh, and sorry, just to the point of scheduling, I think I covered it through that, but you would schedule your own meetings. We do not have a hand in that. We will initially help make sure that those connections are made, but it is on you to calendar your own meetings.
Just one other data point I'd add is I think on average, our startups work with between 3 and 4 mentors, often one as a primary coach and the others as supplementary advisors specifically selected for against their goals and or team gaps. And we encourage folks to meet with their team of mentors at least once during the program as a mini board of advisors to clarify goals and set the direction, but then often they're meeting with mentors separately, as Hope said, based on the relationship with that mentor.
And I would also say, don't diminish the value of the office hours. So you may spend a lot of time seeking out a mentor who can support your IP strategy, for instance, and that's not a mentor that you need to carry through 3 months of a program. You can satisfy that through office hours. So again, it's how can you be intentional and smart with your time to get the most out of this program?
Great. And then we have some questions about the application process and judging. So I'll take them kind of in order of our program timeline. So for the application, John, perhaps you could answer what references are most helpful as part of that.
The best ones you got. I don't know how to answer that, right? Because that's so dependent on like what stage you're at and what industry you're in. So I would just say whatever's going to, shine you in the best light or be additive to the mission that you are, you're representing in the application.
Great. And then Hope, maybe you can talk about the difference between round 1 and round 2 judging. So there's a question of whether the application is the only thing judges see or if there's a chance to pitch your business.
Right. So in round 1 judging, the application is the only piece that is seen and reviewed by the judges. But if you have not started your application, you'll note that there's the opportunity to put in a video pitch. And so it's a little bit more dynamic than just a written application. And then in round 2 judging, that is when you would be able to pitch live in front of a panel of judges.
Awesome. And then I'll keep this with the MD. So John, back to you. A question about, on average, how many companies are selected to participate in the programs? And then if you're accepted into Houston, for example, do you still have the opportunity to engage in different program activities across the US?
Yeah, 100% on the engagement, right? We take the companies that have the biggest and the best impact, right? So that number might vary on occasion. Typically, it's around or slightly less than 10% of our total applicants. So it's a pretty selective program. That means that in total for the Seed Stage Accelerator this year in the US, it'll be somewhere around 250, 270, somewhere in that range. Again, just depending on the quality of the applicants that come in. There's no real like hard number there. You know, another one of the sort of advantages of us not being venture backed or having to make equity decisions on every startup is the only real limitation we have on the size of our cohort is the staff that can handle it and the in a normal world physical capacity to house everyone, which hopefully that will be a consideration this year. So with that regard, it's really going to be about the quality of the applicant. So we're anticipating somewhere around that 250 number. And then, yeah, once you're in the seed stage program, whether your home program is Boston or Austin, Houston or Rhode Island, you're going to get access to all of the same content. You're going to get access to all the same mentors. What we tend to find is that if you're applying to a location because you want access to that industry or that mentor network or the expertise that exists there, those experts are more likely to engage locally. Now, that's not as true in our sort of virtual environment, but by and large, that tends to be true. So we still recommend that you stack rank those selections on your application based on where you think your company will have the most impact, which geography will have the most impact. But it certainly will not limit you from accessing anyone. And I should mention that our experts are international in nature as well, right? So we run programs in multiple countries all throughout the year, and that expert pool is constantly being refreshed with new folks from all over the world. So it's certainly not limiting to be a part of one program, to apply to one program over another.
Great, thank you. And then we have an interesting question from Andre about the benefits if you're more advanced as a company. So Kate, perhaps you can take that one.
Sure, yeah, this is a great question. I would say there are two key benefits that we highlight, particularly for advanced startups. I still think most startups find value in some aspect of the curriculum, some aspect of the mentorship program. But the two benefits that we hear each year from the startups that are farther along are, one, the MassChallenge network. So we are global, we are 10 years old. And so working with our staff, our customer base to access individuals, experts, future customers, investors that are relevant for your stage is a huge benefit, not only during the program, but you are part of our community for life. So I was on the phone with two startups yesterday about to close their Series A, helping connect them to additional customers that they've been trying to get in with, right? So that network is not only valuable where you're at during the summer, but hopefully for life. And the second is just the signaling power. So even as you are revenue positive, there is additional benefit to being validated by a rigorous process that our startups use to go on to advance fundraising rounds, demonstrate stability to potential clients, hire staff. And so we know that that's a huge value also.
And then, there are startups across the early stage life cycle who might be debating whether they want to go into the program as confidential or like in stealth mode or public. So Hope, maybe you can answer like how a startup can decide which might be best to engage with.
Okay, sorry, can you repeat the last part, Hannah? You broke up a little bit on my side.
Sorry. So some startups choose to remain stealth throughout the program while others choose to go public. So maybe just describing kind of the benefit of each.
Got it. Okay. So first and foremost, if you are in stealth mode and you choose to be in stealth mode, we respect that and we will not divulge that. That is, we have plenty of technology on the back end and you will not be given up. The benefit is we do a lot of promotion and we see that a lot of media is very interested in our startup. So it really gives you exposure to a global media that follows and tracks our startups and our cohorts pretty closely. So it's really about extending your reach. If you allow yourselves to be seen and known, you don't know outside of just the MassChallenge network that you'll work with intensely over the summer, who else might have some visibility into you.
Great, thank you. And then, John, we talked a little bit about early judging rounds, but perhaps you can talk about some of the later, because there's a question about whether if you don't meet a goal monthly, if you get voted off the island. And so maybe just explaining a little bit how the actual program works into deciding the final prize.
Yeah,
Sounds Survivor.
Yeah, right. Not a bad
On
idea.
Netflix.
Maybe we should. No, there's no voting off the island, unfortunately. No, I'm joking. There's no voting off the island. So yeah, once you make it through the first 2 rounds of judging, so the written application, the live pitching to the panel of judges, you are then considered a MassChallenge finalist, which means you're part of the cohort. And we use the term finalist because there's the 2 rounds of judging at the end, which will determine the cash prizes. But you're in the cohort, so you're in. It's a blood oath. We have to jump you in. There's, I'm joking. No, once you're in, though, it's sort of it's a commitment, right? So Hope mentioned the Founders Pledge, right? We do expect you to show up. We expect you to be active. There are some eligibility requirements for the cash prizes at the end. So basically, like if you're not showing up, if you're not doing the work, if you don't show up to judging, obviously you're not going to be eligible for the judging at the end. And we'll make all that real clear to you. We balance that though with the understanding that you're founders, you're running businesses, like that's a tough thing to do in and of itself, on top of having this sort of full-time job of being an accelerator. So we're very sensitive to that, and we plan out the curriculum, the engagement pieces to sort of work around your schedule, and the really focusing on that engagement with the mentors. They're very prepared for that as well, that you guys are going to set up the appropriate cadence and the timing that works for you all. So we are sensitive to that. So no, it's really hard to get kicked out once you're in. So we ask that you don't be a jerk. That's why we try to vet a lot of that out up front. And yeah, there's no voting off the island yet.
And since you're already talking about program experience, I'm going to give you this next question, what happens if your a startup's product or service changes throughout the program? Is that okay if they, at the time of application, it changes by October, the end?
Yeah, no, that's great. In fact, I would tell you that if your company looks the same on exit as it does when you came to us, we have failed you. The whole point is for us to experiment, to iterate, we haven't really talked about this much, but at MassChallenge, we've really started to perfect the science of evidence-based acceleration, which is really about trying to diagnose very early on where the gaps are, where the things are that just, especially as a first-time founder, or maybe as even a multiple founder that's sort of new to an industry, the things you just don't know that you don't know. So we really try to help diagnose those things, shift the direction, experiment, iterate very quickly, so that you have the chance to fail, to see what works, and to double down your resources, your investment on the areas that are going to send your business much further along than it would have before. That's the whole point of acceleration, right? So during that process, during that course, you may find a different business model, you may find a different operating model, you might find a different customer segment that identifies with your mission, and that could potentially change the product that you're developing. All of those are great things, as long as we have the data behind it, the validation that we need to make sure that you're on the right track. And that's a lot of what the process that we offer is, right? Is creating that pathway for validation.
And I would add to that we've really codified that change process, because so many startups last year pivoted to be more responsive to COVID.
Thank you. And then Hope, if a startup had applied last year but didn't make it through future rounds or weren't accepted into the cohort, are they still eligible to apply again this year? And are they at any disadvantage because they weren't accepted the year before? 100%
reapply, and we consider you actually advantaged, because you have feedback from our judges from either the first or second round, or both, hopefully. So yes, please reapply.
And judges will not see, so if you're worried, judges will not see on your application that you're a reapplicant.
And then Kate, perhaps a question for you. So obviously our program is zero cost, zero equity, but there's a question about whether there are any other financial obligations. So whether we're required to be a part of the future funding round.
No, that's the short answer. The more involved answer is we will work hard to bring investment opportunities to you, whether they're through sidecar prizes or through introductions, but there is no obligation to take on additional funding. In fact, some proportion of our startups each year are committed hardcore bootstrappers, and we love that.
And then, John, you had mentioned earlier that we have so many international startups that apply. And so are there any requirements if visa requirements if startups participate in the program?
No, not at all. No, we have startups that apply to us from all over the world. In Houston last year, in fact, close to 20% of our cohort was international. They came from all over Asia, Europe, South America. So that's not a requirement for us. I will say that if you're applying to a US program, the vast majority of our experts are going to be US based. So that's where their knowledge base tends to lie. Not all of them by any means, but typically, especially for the application process, since that's what we're focusing so much on here, they're going to be looking for where you're going to create the biggest impact. So if your home market is very small, they're going to want to see that pathway to expansion. If your home market is large, they're going to see how you're going to be able to operate that there, and then also participate with us here in MassChallenge. Again, a lot easier this year being virtual, but just more something to be able to think about and be able to articulate as you go through the process.
And one more add to that is we tried last year to experiment with different times when we would create or host content, just to try and be the most friendly to all different time zones. So we are very aware of our international population.
Great. And then a few more questions left. I'll also just mention that we're going to be hosting an expert event on March 11th, and the MassChallenge experts may be able to give you more insight on how to make your application stand out. So stay tuned for details on that. So to answer the remaining questions before we run out of time, Kate, perhaps you can take this one. So how does MassChallenge survive? Like, what's our business model?
How do we keep the lights on, as they say?
Exactly.
Well, if you all weren't core entrepreneurs, we would be asking you for money. No, I'm just joking. So we are very fortunate. We are supported by three key sources of mission-aligned funding. One is government, who believes that the work that we do, but the impact that you all will have, go on to create meaningful net assets, wealth, and impact for the communities in which we operate. And so we are partially funded from government. We are funded by philanthropists who also believe in the power of entrepreneurship to drive opportunity and progress. And lastly, and this is the largest source of funding for us, from corporate partners who are strategically aligned with the work we do and want to be proximate to the work that you are doing to support, to partner, to be suppliers or providers or customers to make their own businesses more innovative. We are also supported by our alumni who go on to do great things and who give back to the program in very meaningful ways, both with their time, talent, and treasures.
Great, thank you. And we have one question which I'll just open to all the panelists. So as MassChallenge staff, are we available to review applications or review business plans to see if it's a fit?
I'll take that. I'll say no, because we'll get flooded with thousands of them that we'll never actually get to or give you meaningful feedback on, but that is what the application process is for, right? So in the round one of the application, as you fill that out, our goal is to have somewhere between 3 to 5 of our judges read every one of those applications and then give very detailed feedback. So at the very base level, even if you don't make it in, you're at least going to get connectivity to 3, typically up to 5 really high quality judges that'll give you specific feedback. I'll tell you just another tip of the tip of the day, whatever you want to call it. So we've got 2,800 alumni that have been through our programs now, as Hannah mentioned. Most of these folks are pretty proud of the program that they've been through. They're very proud of the fact that they were not only accepted to MassChallenge, but have been through. They're fairly easy to find. A lot of them are listed on our website. If you are connected to your local startup community, there's a good chance you're probably only 1 degree of separation away from some of those founders. And they're a great resource to reach out to and just engage with. I would say the same of our experts as well, but you'll probably get some really good feedback from founders that have been through the program before. So I'd encourage you to do that.
Great. And we have a question. Are startups that are interested in applying allowed to reach out to our alumni? How might they find them through our website? Any questions?
I'm going to put into the chat where it's available. So if you go to www.masschallenge.org/portfolio, and I'll put it in the chat, you can sort and view our alumni, and most of them have contact information up there. So if you sort by program, that tends to be a reasonable proxy for location, though not perfect.
Great. And then maybe a question for the group on what to focus on in the program. So there's a question about maybe diving into like the more technical industry side of a business versus commercialization. So what, the value MassChallenge can provide for both aspects.
Yeah, I'll take this. I think what you're asking here is, does a company sort of need to fit that traditional startup, high growth, venture-backed mold? And the answer is absolutely not. If you're doing things in the social impact space, nonprofits, I think the question was around public health. It's really about the impact that the organization is going to make. Now, at the end of the day, these are still startups, they're still businesses. So some form of financial viability is important, or some sort of plan to get there is going to be important, even if you don't have that fully fleshed out now. But we're not necessarily looking for traditional high growth technology backed or potentially venture backed startups.
Great, thank you.
We are looking for those, but we're also looking for those. just
We have about 15 minutes left if anyone has any more questions. Otherwise, we can wrap things up.
You know what? I've got a question because I always think this is fun. So I'm going to put my fellow MDs, Kate and Hope, on the spot here. What are some of the worst things you've seen in an application? Like, what is an absolute hard no right from the beginning?
I can start there.
And I love it.
So the basic one is like complete the application, right? So I think the worst applications we get are where answers are incomplete, sentences are incomplete, and or answers are skipped. So at a very basic level, take the time to have someone else read through and make sure that you have complete answers with complete sentences that are reasonably grammatically correct. It doesn't have to be Dickens, but is legible. So I think that would be one. The second one, that area that we find challenges, like when it's too technical. And again, you should assume that the screeners are trying to understand the business. So what's the opportunity that you see? What's the unique insight that you have? What is your solution and why are you uniquely positioned to bring it to market? What traction have you made and sort of what protections have you put in place, whether that's IP or financing? And so tell it in prose, because I think what we often see is folks with totally brilliant solutions, but the reviewers or judges end the application review or end that pitch session and just say, I don't get it. And so I think that again is take the time to do your pitch to someone who isn't super familiar with what you do, so you get that, normal person feedback.
I will add one last piece, and that is cohesion between the challenge statement and your solution. So if it's a moonshot or if it's something a little bit more within reach, no matter, just make sure the solution you are providing actually ties back to the challenge statement.
Thank you. Any other questions from the group? Okay.
And it looks like we have some folks with raised hands in a webinar format. I just want to state that. So for example, Susan, I see that you have your hand raised. I don't know if we're able to call on you. Allow to talk. There we go. Nope. All right. Never mind.
Give the people the code.
Okay, so we're pulling back up the slide. So hopefully this was of great value to everyone who joined in. You can learn more about this year's program and any of the upcoming events listed here. So we have the Meet MassChallenge series. We're also hosting Clubhouse sessions every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern and 10 a.m. Central. And then on the next slide, here is the code. So to get started on your application, you head to masschallenge.org/apply. There is a slight application fee just to ensure the quality of our applicants. But if you use code MC21 by the deadline of March 31st, you'll get a full refund on the application fee. And with that, we close. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you to the MDs who joined us today. Again, if you have questions, just attend one of those events that we listed earlier. And otherwise, we look forward to seeing your application come through.
And don't wait. Go do it now. We see them all at the end. The best ones come in early.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jill.
Bye.